Welcome, guys. Good evening, and welcome to Flavo Rihanna's MMA show. I'm your host, Flavo Rihanna, and brought to you by Four Corner Sports. All right, guys. So we have this past Saturday. It was Sean Strickland versus Uriah Hall for UFC Vegas 33 at the Apex Center, and what a main event that we ended up having. All right. Was it the best main event? With the highest, what's it called, star power? No, it was not. But for you UFC hardcore fans, you would have definitely loved this one because of the fact of how the styles ended up interchanging with one another, Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland. Now, we had the co-main event. We had a bunch of pullouts. Chris Dawkins was supposed to fight. Uriah was supposed to fight. Both fighters' fights ended up being canceled out. So we ended up having a new co-main event, which was Cheyenne Bays versus Gloria DePaula. But without further ado, I'm just going to focus on the co-main event and the main event. And I'm going to go straight to the main event. Sean Strickland versus Uriah Hall. Now, what a fight that was, lasting all 5 rounds. This is a middleweight bout with rank number 8, Uriah Hall, versus rank 11, Sean Strickland. Now, Strickland, on a 5-fight win streak going in, or 4-fight win streak going in, he is facing the well-known Uriah Hall, who was at one point his former training partner. And both fighters have an idea on how each other like to fight, and I was very intrigued on that. But these styles were a little bit too good for one another because of the fact that Strickland, a striker, he's not gonna really try to wrestle with you too much. His whole idea is to just get in there, beat you up, hit you with a bunch of punches, overwhelm you, and send you to the floor and go for the TKO. With Uriah Hall, it's completely different. Uriah Hall, he won't pressure you like the way that Strickland does, but he likes to fight within range. He likes to fight within space. He wants to be able to move around, whether it's utilize a bunch of leg kicks, whether it's utilize kicks to the body. He doesn't like to be pressured, face to face one another, because he's not accustomed to fighting in a type of fight where it's more of like as if you're gonna have 2 fighters inside of a phone booth. That fits more of Sean Strickland. Now, what we ended up having on Saturday is more of a phone booth type of fight where Sean Strickland is pressuring you all fight long, and Sean Strickland is utilizing that jab. Now, that jab was very lethal in the first couple of rounds, where Uriah Hall had no answer for whatsoever. It looked very similar on how the aspect of how Randy Costa ended up using, not to that degree, but how Randy Costa was using his jab against Adrian Yanez for the first 3 minutes of the first round of last week's fight. And Strickland, he was using that jab to his advantage. He was making sure that Uriah Hall was, not being able to make any type of decisions on being able to move around. His whole game plan had to be was to defend every single jab that I throw at him, because he's not going to have time to throw anything on offense. So his offense has to become his defense first. And Uriah Hall was not comfortable with that. The striking of Strickland was very superb. It showed very pure dominance on the very first few rounds, because of the fact that Uriah Hall should have honestly really been able to use his, utilize some leg kicks. If he would have utilized some leg kicks, because of the fact that Strickland is throwing his jabs, that requires him to be very heavy on his front leg. I probably saw it within the very first 3 rounds, maybe about 3 to 5 leg kicks that were utilized by Uriah Hall. And at that point, I mean, it's already too late, because of the fact that if you're not utilizing leg kicks, you're not making sure that Strickland is going to be going away from the jab and having to go with something else. He was very front heavy on that front leg. His range of motion was basically 100%. He was able to go wherever he wanted. And Uriah Hall tried using the leg kicks towards the very ending of the fight. At that point, it was already too late. Strickland was already in the groove. He was very dominant. He found his range. He was able to pressure and have Uriah Hall against his back on the cage. And Strickland could just take him down at that point, beat him up on the feet. And Strickland just did whatever he wanted. He did whatever he wanted. And it was a well-sound performance. All 5 rounds it lasted. Strickland winning pretty much 50-45. And that was the final score, I believe, on all 3 judges. Now, this marks a loss on Uriah Hall. I believe the last time he ended up losing, right? Last time Hall ended up losing, I believe it was, because it's been a while. Yeah, because he ended up having a fight with Chris Weidman where he didn't throw a punch. I'm trying to get that for you guys. Um, Not the Weidman Uriah Hall fight. That's not something that I wanted to talk about so much. But he ended up getting a win over Weidman. Gets the win over Anderson Silva. He got the win over Antonio Carlos Jr. back in 2019. Got the win over Bevan Lewis. Last time he ended up losing was against Paulo Costa, another overwhelming striker, another guy who pressures you, beats you up on the feet, and it just shows that style is not very good for Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall likes to fight in within distance, and the way that Costa ended up fighting Hall was the way that he should have been able to fight Adesanya. The only thing is Adesanya just refused to allow him. Adesanya refused to just be a stationary target. He ended up moving around, and Uriah Hall should have been able to move around Sean Strickland, because Strickland was not throwing any leg kicks whatsoever either. So that's what ended up happening. All 5 rounds, Strickland, I think, ended up getting the record for most strikes by a middleweight. Now Strickland, what's it called? Diluted that stat, because he was like, that just means that I have one of the softest punches or something along that nature. I don't hit hard enough for middleweight. But overall, good fight by both fighters. What's next for Uriah Hall? Well, honestly, I think that Uriah Hall might have to take a step back. He was ranked number 8. He was on his way. He was on a nice win streak. Now with this loss, I mean, he was on a 1, 2, 3, 4 fight win streak coming in. Loses to Strickland. He might have to go back into the standings. Into the rankings, and fight somebody of maybe an Edmund Shabazian, somebody that who likes to brawl. Maybe he wants to fight somebody like that. Not really much of takedowns that he has. I know he's trying to work on his takedowns. You may want to fight a Brad Tavares. Personally, one of the people that I said that he should want to fight, he should fight Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is on a losing streak himself. I believe he's on a 2-fight losing streak. He fights Uriah Hall. Uriah Hall, likes to fight within range. Kevin Holland is more of a striker than a wrestler. I know he's working at AKA. He is working with Daniel Cormier on his wrestling defense and his wrestling takedowns. So that's a fight I think that the UFC should make. Kevin Holland hasn't fought since April. Uriah Hall probably won't fight until maybe December, if not next year. Book them two. That would be a fight. That would be a fan fight that a lot of fans would love to see. And I would be, willing to see that from start to finish. As for Sean Strickland, I think what's next, originally I wanted him to fight Marvin Vettori, but if you saw my previous video, you see what happened with Vettori. I think with Strickland, the best outcome for him is, maybe he might have to fight Jack Hermanson. If not, he might have to fight somebody along the lines of a Darren Till. Oh, not Darren Till, because Darren Till has a fight against Derek Brunson. I would say Gaslam, or... No, not even Gaslam, because he's in a jump Gaslam on Tuesday because of the rankings. I think the only other one that makes sense is Hermanson. And yeah, that would just make the most sense. Hermanson versus Strickland. Hermanson is a submission specialist. He loves to, fight on the floor. But Sean Strickland is a brawler too. Sean Strickland will brawl with you, and I think Hermanson could bring that same game too. We saw how Hermanson ended up beating up on Edmund Shabazian, even though it was on the floor. Hermanson also had another fight. It was you're right. It was only Shabazian that he had last fought. Shabazian last time he fought him was on May. So I think it's a little bit. I think it's kind of time for Hermanson to step back into the octagon. Maybe have him fight December. I think November's card is going to get booked very fairly quickly. So I think it would say December Hermanson versus Strickland. Now, moving into the co-main event, we had Cheyenne Bays versus Gloria DePaula. Last time we seen Cheyenne Bays was fighting Monster Conejo, who was making her UFC debut herself. Now, Bays, a contestant from the Dana White Contender Series, she is her fight was against first fight was against Conejo, ended up losing, gets dominated on the floor, gets headlocked and then hip tossed, throughout all 3 rounds, and had no answer on how to get away from Monster Conejo's takedown and her grappling. Now, fast forward, now she's fighting Gloria DePaula in the co-main event. It's very huge to see somebody of that stature who has one loss, has no wins, one loss on their record in their UFC career, being put into the co-main event. Now, you had other flyweights like Jinyu Fry versus Ashley Yoder, who could have been put on the co-main event, but it clearly shows that the UFC sees something in Cheyenne Bays, that she has somewhat of a future within this company, and even though she has a loss, they're not looking at that as a huge stain on her career. So you put her in the co-main event spot, a lot more eyeballs being placed on that, because you want to be on the highest point of the card, facing the easiest opponent that you can face. Not to say that Gloria DePaula was the easy opponent, but round 1, and this fight quickly ends in round 1. Bays ends up fighting Gloria DePaula. DePaula goes down to the floor. As DePaula is going down to the floor, I believe DePaula slipped or something like that. I can't remember exactly. As DePaula is trying to get up, Cheyenne Bays kicks her right dead straight in the face. As she gets up, no, her hands were not touching the floor. It was a legal kick. DePaula's head snaps back, and Bays goes in for ground and pound. Goes on top mount and just starts wailing a whole bunch of different punches, forcing the referee to step in and stop the fight. And Cheyenne Bays walks out with her first win in the UFC, but then also she gets a $50,000 performance bonus. And if you guys listen to her post-fight interview, it was very touching. It kind of hit me in the heart too, seeing somebody struggle financially and get awarded such a big lump sum of money. Sure, I know taxes are going to take away from that, but such a beautiful story coming in, hearing about Cheyenne's financial struggles and her getting awarded that $50,000 bonus. Not too happy the fact that she's getting paid 10 and 10,000 for show, 10,000 for win. It's a very BS type of salary that the UFC offered her. UFC should have definitely offered her a lot more. Even though she's coming from the Contender Series, it does not mean that the UFC should be able to pay them significantly less than any other promotion would probably pay them, But that's just my personal opinion. But yeah, guys, so that's what happened in the main and co-main event. I know, yes, like you had Brian Barberena versus Jason Witt. You had Jinyu Fry versus Ashley Yoder. You had Chavez versus Kai Kamaka. I know all those fights ended up happening. I can't afford to talk about all those fights. It is late here in New York. But that wraps everything up. I'm Flavio Rihanna. Thank you for tuning in my recap of UFC Vegas 33. And please hit that like and subscribe button, guys. Please tell me, guys, what you guys think. Do you guys think that Strickland should fight Hermanson? Do you think he should, fight somebody back into the standings? Should he have that rematch with Brendan Allen? What do you think of the performance of Cheyenne Bays? Should Cheyenne Bays be fighting Monster Conejo in her next bout, or should she be fighting somebody like a Jinyu Fry? Until then, guys, I'm Flavio Rihanna. Thank you for tuning in. Please hit the like and subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Peace, guys, and have a good one. See ya.